Welcome to MRII's Insights and Innovators podcast, where we talk to top market research professionals to get their inside stories about innovative and enduring best practices. Today's episode is sponsored by Sports and Leisure Research Group. Sports and Leisure Research Group provides leading sports, travel, and media brands with actionable, customized, marketing research-driven insights. Now, here's your host for today's episode.
Welcome to today's episode, Entrepreneurial and Inspirational Families in Market Research. I'm Katie Gross, president of Suzy, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Andrew Reid, founder and CEO of Rival Technologies and co-founder and co-CEO of the Rival Group. What makes Andrew's story particularly special is his family legacy in the industry. Andrew's father, Angus Reid, is a well-known name, and now Andrew runs a business with his sister. So Andrew, thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Katie. Great to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's get it started. Although you have market research quite literally in your blood, you actually came to the industry in a non-traditional entrance. So tell us about that.
Yeah, for sure. So instead of taking a more traditional approach post high school, I actually went to film school. And at film school, I got immersed. This was back in the mid 90s. And so I got immersed in video editing and sound engineering, in animation, 2D and 3D and programming, and a bunch of different technologies, some that were very much specifically around film and some just around new media. And that got me really fired up about the technology's opportunity to really help tell stories and drive change. I was also very lucky that while I was there, Microsoft Internet Explorer 1.0 came out. Macromedia bought a company called Future Splash, which would launch a technology called Flash, which for a period of time made a big impact on the industry. And so I did that and then went into advertising and spent some time in digital advertising. And again, that really was also very innovative and really helped me, I think, learn of some fundamental things that I was able to bring to the market research world when I got into it.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. So although a non-traditional entrance, it does tie pretty nicely in.
Yeah, I eventually had to take some night school accounting courses to learn how to read my books when I started my company because I didn't know, what a ledger was and some other things that took a little while to figure out. Yeah, it was definitely, if I could do it all over again, I'd do it exactly the same because it would end up being something that really fits my style of learning and an incredible experience.
I love that. I love that. And now, of course, you run Rival Technologies with your sister, Jennifer Reid, and you worked with her at Vision Critical before. But before we get into kind of that story, as you know, Suzy's name comes from the famous Fish song, Suzy Greenberg. Where does the Rival name come from?
Yeah, exactly. So I'll first tell the story about Rival and then get into the mechanics of the business a bit. But so it's hard coming up with a name today. There's a lot of names that are taken, a lot of really great names. And I remember having this big long list and I was doing what everyone does. You get the thesaurus out, you're trying to figure out things that relate to market research. And I was driving in my car and heard a DJ called Rival Consoles. And I thought the whole idea of, DJs have two different consoles, and sometimes you'll have at a music festival, you have a bunch of DJs that are almost kind of up against each other. And I liked the music. And then the next day I ended up going skiing with a bunch of friends. And it was one of those days where we just kept going faster and faster. And we were all saying, like, if someone falls, they're going to go to the hospital. This is pretty scary. We get down to the bottom of the hill and we were jumping up and down and giving each other high fives. And I had that realization that, wow, this rivalry within our friends really brought out this extra gear that we didn't have. And that really set me up to think, actually, then 2 days later, I was at the gym working out beside some person I didn't know. And we both got really competitive. I didn't even know who this person was. And at the end, we high-fived each other and we said, like, I don't know you, but you brought out this rivalry within each other. And we were able to do more and produce more. And so that got me excited and thinking about that everyone has a rivalry within themselves, within the people they care the most about, and then within their competitive set. And then I think about the clients and the brands we power and how important rivalry is to them. And so that really is what came behind it. So there's a lot you can take from that word because it's a pretty big word, but I like that it's simple. And I do think it really does relate to our industry in a pretty interesting way.
Yeah.
So my question would be, what would you have thought Rival would have maybe stood for when you heard the name?
Sibling rivalry.
Oh, interesting.
Which definitely, well, first of all, I think having a personality linked to your kind of brand is really important. we've all come from companies where we've called it the market research something. My CEO always jokes that if we called ourselves Survey Zenith, we would not have been the company we are
Yeah,
today.
exactly, exactly. You got to have some
Um,
personality. You got to bring that personality.
yeah.
Yeah, and so I mean, this time around, I started Rival in 2016. The
Mhm.
day that I had my last day at Vision Critical Alita, I actually left and started a company called VC Labs, which turned into Rival. And so, what's happened a lot with our family has been, I guess, both the times and the two companies that I've started, I've gotten into a point where my father and my sister look at me and go, "Oh, I think you maybe are onto something that's kind of interesting here." Um, Someone was asking me some questions about having a family business, and my commentary was that I think no one would have nominated me necessarily to go out and start a company. But that's, when you're an entrepreneur, you got some passion about something, you go out and, try and get over that first hump of, do I have something that maybe has some legs?
Yeah, for sure. And so we've all watched Succession, and I'm sure that family dynamics are super interesting when it comes into business. So how have you kind of navigated working, with your sister, what you've learned from your father and kind of key lessons, and what kind of advantages, but also challenges does that come with?
Yeah, lots there. Okay, well, so I'm not Kendall and my sister's not Shiv, so we'll start there.
Good, good.
Um, and people have I've had it brought up a few times to us, and I always kind of laugh. So
Yeah,
there is a lot of family businesses that are out there, and so for us, the dynamic works fairly well in that you know, Angus now is 76, and so when I started Vision Critical, I was 23, and he was much younger than that. I'm 48 now. And so getting to a point where the minute that we realized that we sort of had something, or that I, built the first community that we had, and we had been doing a lot of interesting work in virtual reality. It was my sister that actually first met with me and said, I do think you really are onto some really interesting things, that are pretty exciting. And then my father started coming around and saying, I feel like this is like some of this stuff is really the future of research. And so, and we had there's sort of three parts of the first company, Vision Critical. There was a part that was doing virtual reality. So we were helping doing disaggregate discrete choice modeling, but implementing it through these virtual stores. There was a side that was about visualizing the future of like how surveys work, and then there was the community side. And so yeah, it was very, very, at that point, I was at a point in my career where I'd never been an entrepreneur before. I'd never run a business before. So the minute we got to something that was interesting, I was very happy to sort of move out of whatever seat I was in and fill that with someone that I trusted. So being able to have my sister come in, who at the time had been running the Ipsos ISA panel and had experience in growing panels. And so this idea of like someone who understands recruitment, who understands a bunch of pieces around panels, was really interesting. And Angus, who's just a hard driving CEO entrepreneur himself, was very made it fairly easy for people to sort of fall into positions that made the most sense. And
Mhm.
then and so with that, I always tried to at the last company play whatever role I could that I felt I could add the most value in. And so moving around from everything from product to marketing to sales to innovation in other areas. Um, so the dynamic was, I think again, it's like it was more about people that you trust
Yeah,
that will come in and do the job versus a sibling or a father or a parent. And we never really, I think now we probably have more family meetings and we spend more time talking about where we think about the business going and roles that everybody wants to play. And so that's evolved from that first part to where we are today. And now we're at a point where, Angus doesn't want to have an operational role in what we're doing, but he wants to help guide. And when he's very good at reading the tea leaves and thinking about the future.
mhm.
And that means two things. That's also, when do you react if there's trouble ahead, and when do you really lean in? And those indicators don't always present themselves in the most obvious way. So he
Yeah.
plays a really big role in helping that. Sometimes it's that little push where things are going well and someone needs to push you into that next gear. And sometimes it is, I remember in 2008 when we had that economic meltdown that, we preemptively let a whole bunch of people go the day that news came out. We ended up hiring almost all of them back. And I remember that being a hard day. But in hindsight, looking back and saying, wow, the courage to like the minute this news comes out, say, let's just make sure that we're ahead of everything and that we're not
Yeah.
playing catch up. And even though I think a lot of other companies would have said, let's wait and see what happens. So a lot of great lessons and yeah, a very interesting dynamic where again, it's a bit accidental how it's happened, but very excited to get a chance to work along your family. And we're pretty good about not screaming at each other, at least on a regular basis.
Very good to hear. We'll
Yeah.
come on to kind of topics around the industry itself, but the final question kind of on that family dynamic, how do you balance work life? Or is it all MR chat over Easter and holidays and Christmas, etc.?
Yeah, I live in Canada. We just finished Thanksgiving. We had
Hmm.
Thanksgiving weekend, so we were just all together. And yeah, I think it's taken some time to evolve it. I think we're pretty good about understanding. I think it's more about my wife, my brother-in-law, and my mother they call themselves the
Yeah.
outlaws. Sometimes they you know, they suffer a little bit if we're constantly talking about work and we all have little kids. Well, not little kids, we have kids. And so, yeah, I'd say I think we manage it quite well. I think we're good at being able to say that when we're together for some family events, we need to actually be able to try and put a pin in it.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's interesting. The same dining room that you're celebrating at is often the same dining room you're having incredibly difficult conversations at different
Yeah.
times. So you got to put on different hats when you walk in the door.
Yeah. Super interesting. So let's dive into the industry today. What kind of keeps you excited about working in insights?
Um, Yeah, I mean, I just love where we're at right now. I think this is a very exciting time. I remember when the big data thing started happening
Hmm.
in research and having that for a hot minute feeling like, are we all going to get replaced by big data? No one's going to have to ask questions because you can measure
Yep.
and monitor so much, and that wasn't true at all. And I
Feel
think
like every
that
year that comes up. Yep.
it does, and so I think that we're going to see the insights role really grow in
Mhm.
popularity in a lot of ways. One thing I'm really excited about is this is maybe unpopular, is this idea of breaking the fourth wall of market research, of using the insights that you have as a core element of targeting and personalization. And I think that brands have an opportunity. If you learn something about me from a survey and then you send me an email 2 days later with an offer, if you can link those conversations, then you can start to make me feel like I matter and you're tracking who I
Yeah.
am. I'm incredibly frustrated when I look in my email, and it's amazing how it's not like I don't know if you find, I don't see that there's any brands that seem to get it. Everyone has the same problem where they're just sort of spraying the hose around. And I think that
Yeah.
there's this interplay of attitudinal data of my stated preferences and my attitudes and opinions and how you leverage that and how you talk to me as a marketer and how you market to me. And I think that we're going to see much more entanglement of how we learn from people and sell to them and learn from them and sell to them, and educate them and how we get together. So for me, I feel like insights are here for a long time. Maybe Neuralink is going to change the insights game because you're just going to be analyzing some feed that comes off the back of your neck.
Yep.
That's a scary thing that doesn't seem like that sounded like something out of Star Trek, but now it seems like something that's
It's
probably
coming.
6 or 7 years away. So I don't think,
Yeah.
like I said, I don't think it's going to go away. I think that the more the world gets complicated, the more we do have to really be curious and lean in and talk to people and ask them. And because things are happening so fast, it's not like you can, run a segmentation and then assume that you're good for the next 10 years. You can't build a
Yeah.
persona and then put it on the shelf. All these
Mhm.
things you need to constantly be rethinking and retooling and talking to people because our information coming at us is so significant
Yeah.
that everyone's, I think, shifting their preferences on a frequent basis. So yeah, it's a
Yeah.
very, very exciting times. And it's great to see all these AI innovations, all these new companies coming up. I
Mhm.
feel like competition, the more people that are in our space and that I said are in my backyard, the better for the industry.
Yeah.
And it's just going to make us all more competitive and deliver, I think, better products and services to our customers.
Yeah, back to that name rival for sure.
Yeah.
What do you think some of the challenges we're going to be facing or are facing right now, particularly on the kind of tech and panel side? Obviously, you mentioned your sister ran panels for a long time. I came from the panel industry myself. What kind of challenges are you seeing right now?
Yeah, I think there's the obvious one is this whole issue with fraud in our industry. And in a world where, um, you know, where we have so many programmatic ways to be able to find someone and pay 72 cents to get them to answer 5 minutes worth of questions or 3 minutes worth of questions, of course you're going to have a lot of fraud. And that's going to get harder and harder to detect.
Yeah.
So I'm it's funny to see when you look at I spend a lot of time looking at marketing from other suppliers, and there's so many people that are even going back to like an old-fashioned approach of how they think about recruitment and managing their
Mhm.
panels because they feel like that approach is going to give them less fraud. So I think fraud's a
Yeah.
huge, obviously a huge piece. I think that we're going to see AI come in and take this bottom part of the market where you've got almost the non-researchers wanting to do research or that entry. And I think there's going to be an issue with, are you people going to get a bunch of false positives? There's not a lot of checks and balances that are going on there. So
Yeah.
I think that's going to be interesting to watch. Um, and then, I think just the tooling that people have. I think we've been operating in the same, there's a sort of a mode. If you go and talk to a journeyman market researcher who's been a market researcher for the last 20 years, I think what's interesting is how they get the job done hasn't really evolved that much. The tools they're using are slightly different. And so I think there's some questions about just how we approach thinking about a project and field and tab and all these different elements that I think we can start to reimagine in some really exciting ways.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Andrew, I could talk to you for hours, but it has been a real pleasure hearing the insights and kind of stories from running a family business to market research. But before we wrap, is there anything exciting coming up from Rival Technologies that you'd like our listeners to keep an eye out for?
Well, I think like everyone, we're the whole AI space is very exciting. And having done, I guess one thing I was going to say, even when we were talking about things to watch out for, is this whole world of security and compliance. But
Yeah.
we're at a point where everyone is so concerned about the things happening and bad actors that there's a lot of red tape around that. And maybe that's a good thing because that's going to create some guardrails around some of these new innovations that are coming out. So for us, yeah, we've got a bunch of, we're sort of in tandem, we've been building a bunch of core functionality that I feel like our customers have been asking for, different kinds of community health dashboards, more advanced reporting, more automated reporting. And at the same time, we're rolling a lot of exciting things in AI. So
Yeah.
everything from we've got a thing called thoughtfulness scores that we're launching very soon.
Hmm.
That really helps to look at open-end responses and look
Yep.
at how thoughtful that response is. If I ask you, how was this meeting, and you just say good, well, I probably need to unpack that a little bit more. But if you gave
Hmm.
me a really smart, verbose response, I don't need to ask you more questions. And so much more intelligent ways to think about things like AI-based probing. A lot of cool work with video, everything from being able to have dynamic show rules to being able to ask closed-ended questions inside of videos. So
Hmm.
it's moving so fast that right now it's less about how big your team is, and that's what's so exciting. It's
Yeah.
much more about what you're specing, how you're specing it, and how you're going about building it. You know,
Yeah.
just we're building things now in 2 weeks that we used to have to build in 6 months. And in some cases, we're building things over a weekend that used to take, 2 months. So
Yeah.
lots more to come, but those are a couple of little sneak peeks.
That's super exciting. Well, Andrew, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Katie. It's been fun. Take care.
Thanks for joining MRII's Insights and Innovators podcast. Be sure to subscribe and listen to all of our podcast episodes and visit us at mrii.org for more insights from market research professionals.